Hey guys, this is Red and Blue, the channel on YouTube for all things PSG. Please subscribe. And actually, I'll start with a big thanks on that because we just crossed 200 subscribers on the channel, which might not sound like much, but obviously, like it's still a pretty amazing milestone as far as I'm concerned. So huge thank you to all of you who are subscribed, who are following the channel, who are liking those videos and commenting every day. I see you, and I really, really massively appreciate it. And to all of the folks watching this who haven't yet subscribed, what's wrong with you? Just go and do it. It's just one click. It doesn't cost you anything. So button there, drop it, drop a like, and yeah, let's keep this going together. Today, topic of the day, players that's been talked about very, very highly and very frequently when we're talking about players that PSG supposedly looking at for transfer. Rodrigo Mora, the new Wonderkid of Portuguese football, playing for Porto right now. He's 18 years old. He's doing amazing football, really showing a lot of skills. And obviously, given the PSG Portuguese connection, there's been a lot of chatter about him coming to PSG. And so I kind of wanted to do a status check, both like let you know what is the latest information on those conversations, and whether there's real hope of seeing him join PSG, but also talking about the player. Obviously, he's very young, so I think a lot of people might not have seen him play, might not necessarily have heard a lot about him. So good opportunity to take a step back, talk about him, and see like what kind of player he is. And whether and how he could fit into the PSG squad. So yeah, let's get right into it. I've actually got like some footage I got off of YouTube of the player. So as we talk, you guys can also see the highlight reel from YouTube. Personally, I'm always a bit suspicious of looking at those clips because obviously we only see the best of the player. But in this case, I've got to say he seems like a pretty amazing one. Very, very gifted. Like I said, he's only 18 years old. He's very young. He essentially started playing with the first team of Porto this season. And essentially, Porto has had a new president in Andre Villas-Boas since I think the end of last season. They've been in really deep financial trouble. And so obviously in Portuguese football, when you're in that situation, you kind of sell what you can sell and rely on the youth that you've got in the club. And that's how Rodrigo Mora kind of came up to the first team. And I think this season generally, like, he's impressed a lot of people with the skills that he's shown, but overall, like, he also hasn't succeeded at everything, and so that's where also it's worth talking about because there's still a lot of that needs to be polished in terms of the player and his game. So let's drop back. 18-year-old is really like the kind of the same kind of build that we have in our Portuguese midfield players. Is this very short, very lean kind of player. He's 1 meter 68. So I'm not even going to calculate what this does in feet, but probably like around 5'0", 5'1", something like this. Yeah, like really, really short. Less than 60 kg as well, like 56 kg. So like very small, very lean. Yeah, 5'5", sorry, 5'5" in feet, so a bit bigger than I thought. My conversions are like really not good. Yeah, very small, very lightweight, very lean kind of player. Apparently, like, doesn't mind showing off some physicality in his game. He's a little bit like Joao Neves in that sense. Joao Neves might be short and lean, but like really doesn't mind playing rough and shoulder to shoulder and so on. So Rodrigo Mora apparently has the same kind of qualities. He's primarily in Porto used as what's like a modern number 10 / a shadow striker number 9. They do have another attacker, another number 9 that typically plays. It's wait, I need to find the name again. But yeah, a more traditional kind of number 9. More of a big athletic dude. And so in that context, it's a partnership. Yeah, Samu Ageowa. So in that context, it's a partnership that makes sense of having a bigger attacker who can really like weigh in on the defender, and then Rodrigo Mora rotating around, dropping into midfield, creating that linkage between the midfield and the attack, and also like going into the area, as you can see, and scoring some goals by himself. And yeah, I think in terms of his game in general, like he's obviously like, and you can see the footage, like he's very impressive for his technical abilities. His passing is really great. His dribbling is obviously like really pretty awesome. But more than anything, it's his intelligence and his vision of the game that's getting a lot of positive comments. And so that's also why he's being talked about around PSG. Obviously, he's exactly the kind of player that Luis Enrique and Luis Campos really like. Very, very good with his feet, but also very smart in terms of what he does with the ball and how he looks at the game. And then, like I said, in terms of development, I think he's still very, very young. He's still like in the first year, like going into his second year of really like top level football. So he does still have a lot to learn, but he is really seen as this, new wonder kid of Portuguese football, and that's kind of why I put this subtitle here, like because in the end, after 1 year, like we don't really know how his career is gonna go, and ultimately, he's got the potential to be either the new Deco. Of going on to be this really like world-class midfielder who can organize the game, who can distribute with a pass and eliminate a lot of the opposing team with a pass, who can dribble, who's got the smarts and the quality to make magic happen on the field. Or like he could also be a new Joao Felix, this player who at a young age is valued at a huge amount, but then has trouble down the road confirming and really living up to that promise, and living up to his full potential. And so I think at this point it's a bit hard to say, and we could really go either way. At this point, he's valued, I think, on Transfermarkt is around 35-40 million euro. But it does have a release clause with Porto, which is at 70 million euro. And the word on the street that Porto has obviously been putting out is that they don't want to negotiate on that release fee. And so either like a club will have to pay 70 million euro or he will stay. And they really, like, in an ideal world, supposedly would want to keep him for 1 more year before seeing him leave at the end of next year. We can have some doubts about that because, like I said, like Porto is in some difficult situation financially, and so I wouldn't be surprised that they do want to get some money into their bank account for him. At the same time, there's also a world where, yeah, like, they go if someone pays the full release clause. If not, they figure they can get that sort of money for him next year anyway. So there's really like no big risk for them, unless obviously it doesn't confirm. I think in general also, like, it's something that's a pretty standard behavior by Portuguese club, is that at the beginning of the summer they will say like, oh, this player is not moving, or like we'll only negotiate for this huge amount, and then as the summer go and as we negotiate, the price can drop, and they become more realistic as well. So we'll see if that's the case here. On that note, the last thing as well is that he's represented now by Jorge Mendes, the Portuguese super agent, who's, we've done a lot of business with him over the year. There's been this kind of ongoing joke among PSG fans that Luis Campos and him are, doing a lot of business, aka some shady business together. The reality of it, actually, I've heard that they definitely do a lot of business together, but they're definitely not friends either. And so it's really a professional relationship more than anything. in any case, like, yeah, whether there's personality involved or not, we have done a lot of business with him, and Campos has done a lot of business with him, so that should play in our favor. But at the same time, the player has been talked about basically with almost every major club in Europe has looked at him, some way or the other. Real Madrid was linked to him, Manchester City was linked to him, Chelsea, I think, was linked to him at some point. Right now, we seem to have the edge, and I think that's where the conversation is at. Is that, as far as I can tell, because obviously there's not a lot of information coming out of PSG right now, and so what we get, you can always question the reliability of. But what I've seen is that we essentially have more or less a deal worked out with the player. And the question is really, are we going to manage to find a deal with Porto? Because like we don't like, in an ideal world, we wouldn't want to pay 70 million for him, which I think is fair. I don't think at this point, after only one season, and even with all of the potential that is shown, I think it's a bit early to be talking about those amounts. So yeah, we'll see. There we have an advantage as well, and that's been said, that the player really appreciates how we've developed Vitinha. And obviously we do have a lot of Portuguese player and young Portuguese player who he would play with in the national team, or who he's played with, or he's seen play in the team that he was part of earlier in his career. And so we do have this advantage of being a somewhat reliable ground for development for up and coming Portuguese players, and so hopefully that helps make the difference. And I think that's a nice segue into the next point, which is like, how would he fit into the PSG squad? I think, like I said, in Porto, they play him as this, like, 10 plus, or like 9.5. So this very offensive attacking midfielder, or this shadow striker that can drop into midfield, which typically in Paris would be like somewhat similar to the role that Dembele plays. At that point, though, like, I question that position for him for two reasons. Why? One, with Dembele and with Ramos, we already have two players who can play in that number 9 position, and all of our attacking players can sub in there. And so in that context, it seems that the priority for us, if we look at our liner attack, is really more on the right wing, and having a left-footed right winger that can drop into this space. And João Neves, for all of his talent, is not priority right winger, and is right-footed, so it doesn't really fit the bill on that. And at the same time, second reason is that I question whether, like, his size and his stature is going to be an impediment in this position. I think Ligue 1 in general, and Champions League even more, tend to be very, very physical, especially for like number 9, or like that central attacker position, whether you can hit a number 9, a false 9, or whatever, like shadow striker. Yeah. Anyway, that person playing in that spot do need to rub shoulders against like some big, meaty, like physical defenders. And I think in PSG overall, like, we do already have a deficit when it comes to size. Obviously, typically more in midfield, but also if you look at Vara, he's not the biggest dude ever. So do we want to add to that? I don't think, in fairness, I don't think Luis Enrique and Luis Campos think about it exactly in those terms. And Luis Enrique in particular, like, obviously would have seen firsthand a Barca team which was dominating and crushing Europe with Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, and like literally like, small players in almost every position. So it's not a breaking deal, but it's just something that needs to be kept in mind. And I think ultimately for me, like, the way I'm looking at Joao Felix and looking at his game, I think the comparison with Vitinha is actually fairly interesting, in the sense that Vitinha was also initially an attacking midfielder that Luis Enrique dropped back at the basis of midfield, and now is this deep-lying playmaker who can organize the game for from deeper down, who doesn't have to face as much physical challenge from defender. He's got more time and usually more space to do what he's good at. He can run, he can dribble, he can organize the game, he can like break opposing lines with passes. And I think Joao Felix. I'm looking at the subtitle. Rodrigo Mora really shows some of the same qualities, and so in my head, like, could be pretty amazing at doing that same thing. Could be a potential Vitinha sub. I wouldn't be entirely surprised. I think right now the player. His position and his traits and his style of football are maybe a bit more offensive than that, but yeah, I could like very much imagine that. And I think ultimately, and we've seen that last year when Joao Neves joined the club, and I'm fully expecting that to happen this season again. We know that Luis Enrique, at the beginning of seasons, he tries his new recruits in all sorts of different positions, try to see where they can play, where they can't, where they can help, where they can't, how like different combinations of player could work in different areas. And it's also why last season we've seen, such improvements from the team in the second half of the season, is that when things click and once he found the right combination, and things fall into place, all of a sudden the team starts kicking on all cylinders and really showing the best football that they can play. And so I wouldn't be surprised, if we bring on a Rodrigo Mora, to see him being tested as a false nines and like in different positions of midfield, could even be tested on the right or on the left or attack. He's young enough and versatile enough anyway and talented enough to be able to do that. So we'll have to see exactly what Luis Enrique would have in mind. I think for me though, like, I come back to the same point that I was making, which is at a time where it already looks like our team is a bit short when it comes to physicality and height and weight, in midfield specifically. Do we want to add another profile of a short player, like gonna have trouble in the air, gonna have trouble with physical people? And yeah, I think after especially the game against Chelsea, it's a fair question to ask. Once again, like, we could go for him. We could like do all in on this kind of player, just like Barca did some 10 years back. But yeah, it's a choice that we need to make with our eyes wide open. I think ultimately, like, at the beginning when I first heard the name, honestly, like, I wasn't super convinced by it, because I do think he's very talented, but I really do worry that we're leaning too far into a single profile of player, and that we need to have a bit more diversity in our squad. But yeah, more and more, the more I see him, the more like, damn, he's talented, and like, yeah, he looks really, really, really strong, and he could very well be, a 150 million euro like football superstar in a few years. And like, if that happens, I want him in Paris. So it's worth some thought. The lucky part is that I absolutely trust Luis Campos and Luis Enrique to be able to really think through how the teams come together, the tactics and the advantages and disadvantages that certain profile have. So I'll put my trust in them to make the decision on this. I hope that we don't pay 70 million euro for him. Like I said, I think it's, fairly overpriced for a player. But if we can get him around like 40 to 50 million, yeah, I'd be pretty happy with that. It feels like, he's pretty much where Doué was last year. And so it's still a bet. He's still young and he still hasn't proven long term. But it could very well be a bet that is it's worth making. So we'll see. Like I said, word on the street is that the player is keen and that we more or less have a deal in place with him. So it's really about finding a deal with Porto, which is never the easiest thing in the world to find a deal with Portuguese team. But they need money. We've got some cash. We're good friends and tons of Portuguese on both sides. So hopefully the logjam can break and we can make whatever Luis Enrique and Luis Campos want. I'll take their opinion on this one. I'm leaning yes when I used to be leaning no, so I'm kind of switching my mind progressively. But yeah, we'll see. And I know a lot of fans. I've seen him in the Club World Cup in particular, where he had a couple of like really, really strong games. To be honest, I've seen him there, and are really hoping that we bring him on board. So yeah, we'll see. This mercato is only just starting. There's tons of things which are happening behind the scene. You can definitely see it simmering in terms of the rumors and the players. It's all bubbling away. So hopefully, sometimes very soon we might have a Pacho moment of a player no one's heard about coming in to join, or a Desiree Doué moment, a player that we keep talking about, like we have for Rodrigo Mora for a while now, where finally things click and it gets finalized. Anyway, that's what I had on Rodrigo Mora at this point. Let me know in the comment what you think of the player. Are you keen to see him wear the PSG jersey? And if so, like, where do you see him fit in this team? Like, where do you think would be the most natural spot for him, where he could add his undeniable talent to our team? And as always, leave a like to the video. That's always a big boost, both for the video to get noticed and pick up more views, but also like for myself, I always appreciate it. It's a little signal that you guys like what I'm doing. And yeah, keep subscribing to the channel, man. 200 subscribers. It feels a bit weird. I'm gonna be honest. I really love it as well. So yeah, again, I massively appreciate it. So big thanks to all of the subs. Keep it coming, and like, let's go to 500 next. That's my next target in my crosshairs. Cool. So yeah, thanks so much for watching again, and don't forget, ici c'est Paris.